So what seems to be going on with the meta right now? I mean, it looks like Draven is absolutely dominating everything, but I think there might be more to it than what meets the eye, and Draven, although a powerful deck, might not be the most powerful, and there could be some surprises in this meta report. So what does that look like? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So yeah, that can be the biggest thing. I mean, you're looking over at the China stats and you're seeing, well, there's Draven everywhere. And you look at the Runes and Rift tournaments that have been happening and it's like, well, there's a lot of Draven there too. Well, that can be a little bit discouraging in a lot of ways, but it feels like Spiritforged as a whole is actually doing pretty well and is in a general healthy state. Yes, Draven is going to be probably the most popular matchup, like what we've said in previous videos. He is going to be kind of the Kai'Sa of set 2. Where he is going to be the one that is being ran probably the most. Now, with that, there's a good sign there in the fact that you can now at least prepare for that kind of matchup early on. If you are going to Vegas, if you are going to Italy, you are able to then go ahead and start grinding on these deck lists. You know Draven, you know what it's able to do, and it looks like actually a lot of the deck lists are relatively similar. So you just got to kind of build into, you know, that matchup and understand it well. And so, yeah, Draven right now, he's looking like he is going to be the best performer. Cool, that's fine. Aurelia is actually a little bit of a surprise, and I'm going to be curious to see how the rest of these matchups continue to show, because as of right now, it's like on tournaments, at least in over in America or online at least, we're not seeing these kinds of numbers being represented all that well with Aurelia, where it very well might just be she is a very complicated deck and you do need to know how to properly pilot her into the particular matchups. It also might be that, you know, people just don't know how to go against her in China or whatever it might be. It's hard to say. But, you know, with the Runes and Rift tournaments and the other ones that I have been seeing going on for set 2, Aurelia online has not been doing incredibly well. So that's why I'm a little bit apprehensive. I want to see what's going to continue to happen here, but it is something to definitely keep an eye on. Now, for those of you who don't know too, this is going to be riftboundstats.com, and on here we are looking at events that are from Spiritforged that have over 128 players, and that's going to be 12 total events so far, over 1,500 decks included. So this is the big one, and one that we are going to be taking a closer look at is going to be Victor. Now, like what we've said in the past, Victor has the direct kill spell. And there's even been a couple of really interesting ideas that have made Victor a really good option. You can go ahead and you can have a lot of consistency with him. We've seen him do decently well in set 1, and he's even gotten a little bit better because a lot of people aren't necessarily going with the board wipes, if you will. We had a Cathian Rain a lot. We had Singularities. We had all of this stuff that really seemed to shut down Victor, and it looks like, well, Kai'Sa is taking a little bit of a step back in this meta, which is interesting to consider, and this has now evolved into a meta that instead is more unit and movement based, especially with purple being such a prominent color. Now, that's going to be something to really keep in mind here. And it's going to be fun to see how Victor continues to develop. But again, those instant kill spells are going to be something that Draven might not very well have the answers to. And so if you go ahead and you just say, hey, kill that unit, well, it doesn't matter if you can go ahead and send them back to base or something like that with like what you would get with Falling Star, or, you know, something like Singularity, which deals 6 damage, and then you just respond with Draven's signature spell, which is a gear, or signature card, which is an equipment that adds 3. Well, great. That's awesome, because now my Singularity kind of got wasted there. And so you got to be a little bit careful on how to go into this, but still, Victor just has the answers here. And at the same time, it's really interesting too, because Kai'Sa seems to be, again, really struggling. I mean, in this meta alone, orange has its ways of deflection. Same with green, with Aurelia. She has a lot of ways to deflect too. Master Yi has a lot of buffs to go ahead and make it to where your units are very difficult to try to kill because, oh, by the way, I'm going to Hex Tech Ray, and it's like, well, then I Unguard and add +2. I Discipline, add 2, whatever it might be. And it's like, ugh, gosh, how is Kai'Sa going to be able to match up to that? And so keep in mind, though, as we look at this tier list, this is taking a lot of the deck information and trying to organize it. So as of right now, though, this is what everything is going to be looking like, at least according to this website, though my opinions do differ a little bit from the data that is at least being shown. We'll see. Now, this is interesting, though. Draven still going to be in the top percent, as we can see here, still has the best turnaround in this case, and is giving a lot of good results. You're seeing that, you know, a good amount of what is showing up is able to make it into the top 16, and we'll look at some of those stats here pretty soon. But then on top of that, again, we have Aurelia, Victor, and Fiora. Now, these are really good turnarounds with that, and there's going to be something interesting about Fiora, and that is going to be her signature spell. It is so powerful, the fact that you can go ahead and defy pretty much any spell, and then immediately add the cost of that spell into the might of another unit until the end of turn. That can really stop a lot. The difficult part with Fiora, though, is if you are able to deal with her units on the board, she has to spend essentially an entire turn rebuilding things, give or take. You know, if you go ahead and you're going against a Draven and they rebuke the Fiora, then okay, cool. Then I can get out my Fiora for 3, and then potentially then I can rebuild my board and at least accelerate things out. But if you just outright destroy the Fiora, well, then your hasten, your acceleration mechanic is just completely gone, and Fiora takes a big step back. And so you got to be so careful about how you maneuver and pilot Fiora as a whole, because one little misstep and you can really fall behind. But still, again, I really love these color combinations. Now, it's been interesting to see Ahri actually be up here as high as we see them, though she hasn't nearly been as represented as what we've seen in the past. I mean, her ability is really good, and the fact that you do have the defy spells and the deflex and, you know, things to go ahead and control the board state, she might be a sleeper that we might that you might need to play test a little bit more to see what she is able to do. I know I have a couple of friends that have been going against the Ahris, and they've been actually pleasantly surprised by what she has been able to do. And so again, we need to play test a little, we need to see, but Ahri might have gotten a little bit of an upgrade, and especially with the -1 to might and, you know, other equipment and cards that have been added in, she might get a little bit of an increase, but time, of course, will tell. Now, Lucian and Annie, I am a little bit sad to see their turnaround here, a little bit lower than what we would like, but still, I mean, can't blame them. And Master Yi even is seeming to have a little bit of a difficulty in trying to find himself here. And I feel like people are gonna need to go back to a little bit more of the traditional Yi with a few cards being added. I don't know just yet, but it feels like it does also need battlefields like Paper Tree. And gosh, I feel like you need to still run and figure out the ways to get the Dead Bloom Predators. And it sucks because it's like, yeah, well, you know, we got to have Punch First in the deck. Adding 5, especially to a unit that is already going to be defending and getting up to 7, or even a Punch First to go ahead and take a battlefield, is something incredibly powerful, but, you know, something that we can't necessarily work with. Now, again, this is all based on the data and the top 16 rates and things like that. But even with this, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see Ezreal so low, because he's even had a couple of really good showings. And even like Sivir, for example, has had a really good showing where it ended up winning one of the Runes and Rifts set 2 tournaments there. And so, again, it's going to be time will tell. And even Rek'Sai, for example, was able to go ahead and I think got 5th place with the Invitational when Ganstrax piloted it. It's something that could be definitely one to keep an eye on, one that could be doing incredibly well, but you got to be but time will tell. Biggest thing. Set could also be really good. One that we need to keep an eye on because it's such a powerful legend ability. Doesn't feel like it needs much more added to it, and it can still go ahead and pack a punch in this meta. Again, though, the biggest thing is just like when you would go against Annie in set one with Origins with Set, a fight or flight or, a rebuke or things like that will just completely set you back and devastate you. And you don't have that defy spell like what Fiora has. And Fiora's ability to be able to channel a rune when something becomes mighty once per turn, at least, is a really good ability to have because, you're kind of mitigating the cost of your cards by one. So, the power cost of your cards by one. So I'm going to be curious to see how this continues to develop because, again, I really feel like Rek'Sai is a little lower than it should be. Set even is a little bit lower. Ezreal is much lower than I feel like he should be. I feel like he could very well be up into the B tier. And, I really, Misfortune, I feel like could be a little bit lower down into the C tier. But again, time will tell. Annie, I feel like still needs to be figured out a little bit, but we'll see what comes about that. And I think she just needs to take a little bit of a step back here. Now, we have looked at this a little bit in the past, but again, it is something to keep in mind here. Now, this is a funny one because, don't get me wrong, they had, 128 players? Yeah, 128 players, and the top 8 was literally Aurelia and Draven. Kind of crazy there. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at the top 16, it changes up a little bit, and you get to see a little bit more diversity there. But even with that, it's still funny that the top 8 was literally that tight, with also the top 3 being Draven. Now, that's going to be the biggest thing is I feel like Aurelia actually has a great matchup into all the other decks in this meta, but can really struggle against Draven. Again, though, especially in playtesting, it feels like Aurelia needs to shift a little bit on her ideas. And when I was playing against Lancet last night, it was a completely different game when he was bringing his units back to base every single turn, which is about the same strategy that Lucian also shares. So again, something to definitely keep in mind with that. And it's going to be that shift of strategy. How do I go ahead and mitigate the amount of battles? Or if I am going to be doing some combats, how do I then still tilt them in my favor, knowing what Draven is able to bring to the table? And that's going to be probably the biggest question that is going to need to be answered here. I mean, still going ahead in 9th place, a Fiora that was able to get in there, and then even a Kai'Sa, a Yi, and a Misfortune. So really cool to be able to see that. Next, of course, is going to be Shanghai. Now, this is going to be really cool, too, because actually a pretty diverse top 8. We're even seeing an Ornn, Annie, Kai'Sa, and Ahri. Again, we're going to be taking a look at some of these deck lists a little bit later. And so with that, curious, especially because this is an Ornn that got 2nd place. And we've been playtesting this deck list, and still, Ornn can have a very difficult matchup going into Draven. You need almost win the die roll first and foremost, because if Draven ends up starting to be able to develop the battlefield a little bit more, you're going to start struggling. But still, I really wish we had gameplay on this tournament because it looks absolutely interesting here and one to be able to keep an eye on. I want to see, an Annie deck. I want to see this Ornn deck. We've already play tested this Ornn deck, and it actually did pretty well, and we had some really cool gameplays. This Ahri is also really interesting at 8th place. And then again, we got Fiora, Victor, and even a couple more Kai'Sas. And so really cool to be able to see a lot of this. And even in the top 16, we can now see the conversion rates. Of course, Ahri is going to be the highest of the 3 entered. 1 made it. So, yeah, that's going to be the highest there. Same with Ornn, 4 and 1. But 30 decks here out of 128 were Draven, and 7 ended up making the top cut, which is still a really good conversion percentage there. Then next, of course, we have some Annies, and we need to figure out what to go on with Annie. We had 1 Fiora and 2 of the Aurelias and 1 Victor. So still actually a pretty good ratio there in this case. And then of the 20 Kai'Sas, only 2 made it. And I think Kai'Sa is in a little bit more of again, that discovery phase where we need to figure out what we can best do with this deck color combination and legend ability to be able to compete in this meta. And did Kai'Sa really have that big of a fall away, or is this just something that we need to continue to make an adjustment? Next in the top 16, again, a very diverse top 16 there, where you are able to see how much is actually able to get here. And this is very reassuring. I mean, we even have a Lee Sin that was able to go ahead and make it into the top 16. That's really cool. Then we have Ezreal. We have a lot of Kai'Sas, same amount of Dravens, 4 decks there, and a lot to be able to be seen. Now, again, Rek'Sai, Darius, those 2 decks may very well be kind of the surprising factors of this meta, where the big thing that I think really shuts down Darius is the going wide or being able to do some direct removal. Well, Darius is the aggro deck. Rek'Sai can be the aggro deck to just go absolutely wide. And especially with the Rek'Sai ability to be able to look at the top 2 cards when you conquer and then play a card from there, well, cool. Let's call that good and just go ahead and extend our hand size by literally 2 cards every time that we conquer. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do to utilize that. Now, Azir is one to really just keep an eye on too. I don't necessarily know how good Azir is yet. And the main reason why I say yet is mainly due to it can really fall prone to the gear destruction. And if it starts without a gear in hand, you can just really slow yourself down a little bit too much to where it's so hard for you to be able to catch back up. Now, we'll see. It might still just be a little bit of a discovery phase. Azir, especially as the champion cards, are incredibly powerful and can make such a big difference. But at the same time, I would much rather even play some of the Azir cards in Ornn itself, and we've seen some deck lists that have been able to do that. And again, we have another Victor list, and there was Pew Q, who played in the Runes and Rift tournament with Victor and was able to do incredibly well against Darius. And again, that board wipe is just absolutely crazy. Being able to do Imperial Decree and then Bellows Breath to be able to deal damage to units. And it's just like, cool, well, we're going to get that taken care of. And so it'll be fun to see how that continues to develop. But it's a really interesting idea and combo piece that can really help clear out the board here. Now, next, of course, is... we even have this one down here, and it's really interesting because even Jinx ended up sneaking in. And there's a Sivir able to get 3rd place. And again, I'm going to be saying this where it really feels like this meta is starting to make a little bit of a change, where instead of us really worrying about the best deck, and yes, there is still going to be that rank ladder for sure, it is going to be coming down to the piloting, to the repetitions, to knowing your matchups. And if you happen to be a Sivir player that just really knows your matchups better than a Draven player that knows his matchup, that doesn't necessarily know his matchups, well, that's already in and of itself going to be a big advantage for you and something to keep in mind with all of that. So time will tell. But again, that's going to be the biggest thing. Find the deck that you love, and then go in and play test, make the adjustments, find the deck changes that really fit to your playstyle, fit to your mindsets, so that when it comes to finding your lines, you are able to do so successfully. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at a few deck lists. Now, Victor is going to be a really interesting combination here and something to watch out for as we go into this meta. Now, there could still be a couple of adjustments made. There are 2 different versions of Victor that you can see, one that has no units and one that has a couple of units. Now, both are able to do very good, but I feel like that this version of Victor that does have more units in it is better equipped for the overall meta. Whereas if you know that, oh, this is probably the 0 unit Victor, if you keep matching aggression with aggression, which Draven is great at doing, Rek'Sai is really good at doing, and even Darius as well, really great at doing, then it's just like, well, I'm going to keep falling more and more behind. So definitely something to keep an eye on there, something to watch out for. But this is a cool combination here. I mean, we have things like Xin Zhao, which is able to go ahead and I enter ready for you if you have 2 or more other units in your base. And so it's like, cool, I can all of a sudden just really get things going right there. Then you also have even like the Thousand Tail Watchers, the Face Breaker to create a stunned unit to push them back to base. Of course, the Hidden Blades, the card draw that you need. You also have Call of the Week, which is going to be one of the most powerful cards here in Victor, and something to really watch out for. Then just the direct kill spells, Vengeance having 2 in the deck, so strong in this meta. Then of course Imperial Decree being able to then, any unit that takes damage immediately kills it, and you already have a lot of units out on the board, and it's like, cool, well, here we go. Then even in the side deck, you have things to continue to get things going for you, to kill other units, to really devastate the board, and it's really interesting that Grand Stratagem is no longer in this deck. Then Lucian is a really fun one. I love the idea behind this deck because it can also be a really good Darius counter. Or Draven counter, sorry. It can be a really good Draven counter. And the reason for that is because of Lucian himself. Now, when he comes in, he has Weapon Master, so you can immediately equip a equipment that is out on the field to him for free. Then on top of that, the first time I conquer each turn, you can ready him. So he'll go into a battlefield, calls it good, takes it back. Not only that, the legend ability allows you to then go ahead and add a assault 1 for each equipment that is on your legends, or on your units, sorry. And so if you go ahead and you attack in and you have 3 equipment on the Lucian right here, well, that's assault 3, not even counting the additional might that you get added from the equipment that is out on the board. And so there is a lot of really fun ways to utilize this. Then you also have the Pouty Poro to go ahead and get some deflect, which again can really hurt the Draven. The one thing that he does not want to do early on is sacrifice a lot of his runes due to power cost. And so if you can start utilizing that, it's really interesting to see what's going to be happening here. Now, of course, this is a best of 1 deck, but still something to really keep in mind here on the type of things that you can utilize properly. I gotta say, I absolutely love the Kiana, because again, if you play into the deflect, if you get the the equipment that also adds deflect, you are going to make it really difficult for the Kai'Sa players, for the Draven players, because they have to pay so much more to try to take care of the battlefield. Not only that, even with something like the Trinity Force, you can go into a battlefield and then you have a decent chance of being able to score 2 points if you happen to hold with it. Now, of course, Draven with the fighter flights and things like that can answer in response to that, but this is such a fun deck. And Tarot King has a really good deck list from the Runes and Rift tournament. You can find Runes and Rift on X and find his Tarot King specific deck list, but it does really good. And he was able to get, what was it, 3rd place in the Runes and Rift tournament that I got 4th in. And then as well, he got 7th in the Invitational with the same deck with a couple of differences, but all in all, pretty much the same thing. So really cool to be able to see. And again, I think Lucian is going to be slept on here. Now, this is interesting. And it's like, well, okay, cool. If I am playing Jinx, then, or if I am playing this color combination, why would I play Jinx over Draven? Why would I play even Annie over, why wouldn't I play Annie over Jinx? And it's like, well, yeah, you're right there. But even still, it's a really interesting idea. And it's silly to me that this actually did well. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but you're looking at all the card draw that it also has, and you're like, okay, cool. Why at this point? And also no scrap heaps. No scrap heaps either, which is really interesting because it's like, well, playing out, your champion here and you immediately get to discard 2. Well, why wouldn't you put scrap heaps in that? I mean, I would even put that over Called Shot in this case, but still it was able to go ahead and get 7th place in this tournament. So there might be something here. Even still, you could even take the same carbon copy and immediately take it into Annie, take it into Draven if you so choose. You just, of course, would take out the signature spell instead and make the changes as you see fit. But still, really cool deck idea, and curious to see how this will also play out, and if we maybe see this a little bit more, or at least this same deck idea in maybe a Draven or a Annie type deck. Now, Sivir is going to just be an absolute blast to play. It can be a little bit complicated, but this is fun because this is a third place deck, and this is a Sivir Aurora. Now, a lot of people were a little bit worried and saying like, well, Aurora is officially dead in set 2. And it's like, maybe not. Maybe not. And so because of that, it's like, well, what can we then do to make this be a successful deck? And it's like, yeah, because it's following the same thing that Misfortune is able to do, but then with the caveat of anytime that a rune is recycled, you are then able to create a gold with Sivir. I mean, it's such a good legend ability. And then anytime that you kill a unit, you immediately can ready her back up. So if you keep doing this back and forth, you could create a lot of gold really fast, and you're almost okay with sacrificing some of the runes in the beginning to be able to then make sure that you don't have to really recycle later in the game, and you can just go and keep so many of your runes with just that little bit of a sacrifice in the early game. And so just such a fun, cool idea. It is a little bit scary that literally they only have 6 and 7 units if you count Sivir here, but still really cool to see. And I'm curious if MF is going to be maybe a little bit better, because again, it is the same color combination, but that's something to look at and maybe something to even test. Now, this is the interesting one too, the Ahri that got 8th place. And just, again, this is a best of 1 tournament, but still something to keep in mind. And it is pretty easy to add a side deck in, but still, it is some really interesting dynamics to be able to utilize. And especially something like Thwonk is such a powerful card for green, and one that needs to be watched out for because it can be repeated. So for literally 4, you can go ahead and stun 2 attacking units, and that alone could be enough to go ahead and win a battle, win a exchange. Even sometimes all you need to be able to win a game in your match is to hold once. If you do that, you have a really good chance of taking the match. And I think that's exactly why, Ahri might be a very scary one that cannot be slept on. I mean, and Aurelia being added to this color as well is going to be so powerful here, and something to keep in mind. Also love the 2 time warps and the 3,000 tail watchers, something to watch out for. And then again, the last deck that we are going to be talking about, the 5th place Darius. Again, this is still a best of 3. Really cool to see here. And you look at this and it looks pretty good. Now, the legend ability is just so powerful because if you've already played out a card for turn, you get an extra rune just by, Darius being Darius. So really cool to be able to see that. Batsu is one that has put me on this deck, for set 1. And it might be one to watch for set 2, and rightfully so. You look at these cards here, and you're like, yeah, you can just go ahead and build some really big units. You could go wide pretty dang fast, and then just devastate the board and say, all right, I'm going to keep responding over and over again with aggression, with answers, with things that are going to make it really hard for you to be able to maintain your board state and allowing me to get ahead and win. Then, of course, all the removal that you could want to see. And this is something that is also really powerful in this meta, is that, yeah, like we said, there is a lot of deflect, but that because of that, there is even less removal. So if you are going against a lot of Dravens, they're not going to necessarily suspect a lot of falling stars. You do need to play around, like if they have runes up, because if they have 2 runes up or something along those lines, they can do a heck of a ton. They can do, hard bargain. They can attach any of their equipment, which immediately can be played at reaction speed. So you falling star the Draven and they play the signature spell, he goes up to 7, and you kind of wasted that spell at that point. But even still, it is a really fun idea, and I'm going to be curious. I want to play test this a little bit because it looks like it could be really good. And again, that legend ability is such a game changer. And with that, this meta is still to be defined, and I don't want you guys to be sitting back and being like, ugh, we're either going to be playing Draven or losing against Draven. And it's like, no, not necessarily. We felt the same feelings here at the beginning of set 1. We saw how much Kai'Sa and Master Yi were being played in China, and what ended up happening? Well, actually, we had a lot of really big surprises coming our way. So is that going to be the same thing here? I think so. and I think it will be the League of Draven for the beginning. And then things are going to be blown wide open, and we might even have a couple of decks surprise us, much like what Annie did back in Origins. But anyway, with that, guys, go ahead and let me know your thoughts on the meta. How do you feel about it? What deck might be catching your eye that you think you might be getting, or you might be playing next? Let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, guys, have a good one.